Alright guys, Thursday the 13th of August, and back in the garage, and I believe this is the start of part 7. So we did the cam timing, cam degreeing, whatever you want to call it, yesterday with Elin, and again thanks to Elin for stopping by and helping me with that. I believe he's going to be stopping by tonight, and we're going to have you look a little closer inspection of the head, so that'll be later on tonight after work. But in the meantime, I'm going to disassemble the paraphernalia from doing the degreeing yesterday, and I will try and button up the front of the engine block. So I've got to put the oil slinger on and the keeper on, as well as the timing chain tensioner, the timing chain cover, etc. I've got to put the lock plate on, and actually these are drilled for lock wires, so I'll probably put a locking wire on the bolts that are holding the cam gear on. So we've got a few things to do to button the front of this motor up, so we'll go ahead and do that now. Alright guys, so we have the cam gear installed, and we've got it safety wired here. Mine didn't have locking tabs. It was actually drilled for safety wire, so we've safety wired it. I actually have, I think, the remnants of a locking tab underneath of it. This is the way it came off the car, so we're putting it back this way. So safety wired. We're just about to do the oil thrower or oil slinger, whatever you want to call it. This is the way I took it off the car. It's important to note that the dish on the slinger, I don't know if you can see it, but the dish actually faces out. Okay, and that's why I've wired this together so I wouldn't get this wrong when I put it back on. And then we'll put the spacer on the front of the crank, and then we'll move on to the timing cover. Alright guys, we have the oil slinger fitted on the crank. So we're back to the spacer. Now normally, what I would normally do is I would fit the spacer immediately to the crankshaft and push it home against the oil slinger. But according to the manual, they want you to put this on after you put your timing cover on. So let's try it according to the manual. I'm having a feeling that I'm not going to be liking that so much, but let's do it as per the manual. Just so you know, the chamfered edge leads, so that will go first through the seal and against the slinger. Onto the tensioner. So I have a choice here. This is a new tensioner made in India, which is the black one here on the right. Or I go with my original cleaned up tensioner, and it does have a few scratch marks on it, but there's no finger catchers there, so I'm thinking I'm going to go back with my original tensioner. Just makes me feel a little bit better about this situation. So we'll go with the original tensioner. This is going to be fun. There's not a lot of clearance to get a cotter pin, or a split pin, sorry. You probably can't see that, but all the way down under there you need to get a washer and a split pin. So we'll have fun doing that. Alright guys, so we've got the tensioner now installed in the timing cover. We've just oiled up the gear set. We're just going to do some Permatex aviation forma gasket for the actual gasket, and on the back side and on the front side, and then we'll install the timing cover and we'll put that spacer on the front. Alright guys, the crank spacer is now on and in the seal. All I did was just use the back of my wood hammer and just tapped on the top of it with my copper hammer just to drive that in equally. Just be concerned obviously about the keyway down here. You can't really, well, I guess you could get a socket that's just on the outside face of this. I don't have something quite that big. I did have a socket to start it, but then the keyway would interfere with it after you got it so far on. So anyway, just be concerned about that. Don't be hammering away on your keyway. So just the end of the wood hammer seemed to work pretty well. So that's on. So what we'll do now is we'll torque down all of our oil cover, or sorry, our timing cover bolts, and move on from there. Alright guys, back to the flywheel and our pilot bush problem. So one of the guys had asked me on my YouTube channel about the possibility of using the bush from my TR250 crank that I had bought, and here it is. Now the problem with this bush is it's probably double the size that it needs to be. So although it does fit perfectly, which it should, so and another gentleman by the name of John asked me how tight he thinks that the pilot bushing should fit in the back of the flywheel, and I said, well, it should be a tight fit, but it should be able to still spin. So that's kind of what I mean there. Now there is the bushing in all the way. That's as deep as that bushing will go in there. So I would need to trim that much off of the bush. You can see that it's actually fitting flush. There's actually a little step there to prevent it from pushing forward, but you can see it's fitting flush with the, or close to being flush with the face of the flywheel. So there is an option there for me to actually trim that down. So I might give that a whirl. I'm getting pretty good at trimming stuff down, so that is an option. So I'm going to consider that. Hey, look at it this way. If I cut it off and I screw up the first one, at least since I have double the length required, I have a second chance at it. All right, guys, success. It's only a $4 part, but it makes me feel good. So at least I don't have to wait for it. Anyway, it fits in there like so. Nice and flush and right up to the face. So I am happy about that. So that means now that we can install the flywheel. Well, I forgot to mention I also have a temporary fix to my starter issue. Some of you might know that I have a 73 TR6, and my 73 TR6 has a high torque starter in it. No, I'm not going to go and take the high torque starter out of it, but I have the stock starter from the 73 TR6, so we could temporarily use that if we wanted to run up the engine while I'm waiting for my high torque starter to be delivered. Alright guys, let's move on to plugging some more holes on the side of the block. So this is where the fuel pump goes. So I've dug out the old fuel pump, which I've got over here. So this nasty little thing ran those triple Webers. So this is not a stock fuel pump for the car. So this was an aftermarket pump, but it seemed to have done the trick for the old owner. And technically I could put it back on the car, but why would I put that back on the car when I can put an authentic pump back on, and a newly refurbished pump made in England, AC pump. So that's looking really good. That'll run the Webers no problem, the triple Webers. It'll give it more than enough fuel pressure. So we're going to put that back on the car. Alright guys, I think we're going to switch gears a little bit, and we're going to leave the engine block alone for now. There are things that we still need to do. Look, put the, I've actually got an oil feed to the head that also has the oil pressure switch in it that needs to go in. Obviously the distributor drive needs to go in, and the distributor at some point. You notice that the flywheel is not on. I'm not going to put that on until I actually take the motor or the engine off of the engine stand and put it on a rolling dolly. Just makes it a little easier, a little less heavy to lift without the flywheel on. So we'll wait to do that until it's on the ground, until we're ready to put the trans on. And things like the crank snout can wait as well. I am going to put the mechanical fan back on. I am going to run an electric auxiliary fan that's just going to be on a switch. It's not going to be on a thermostat. That's what I do on my TR6, and that's worked out pretty well. I find I don't need to use the electric fan very often. The only reason I would need to use it if I'm stuck in heavy traffic and not moving for a period of time. So yeah, we'll run the mechanical fan and an electric fan, probably in the front of the radiator as a pusher fan. But we haven't quite decided on that yet. I don't even actually have a radiator for this car yet, so that's still to be purchased. What I think I might do though, guys, is I actually might put the tappets in the engine block just in case. You know, they're on my mind at the moment, so I have this nightmare that I forget to put the tappets on, and I've got the head on. So I think what we'll do is we'll lube these up with assembly lube, and we'll just drop them in the bores just to get them in the block so we don't forget them. It's happened before to people, so don't laugh. So anyway, let's throw these in. They are heavy-duty tappets. These are from British Parts Northwest. And we'll, like I said, lube them up and get them in the block, and then we'll just keep the block covered up. So again, I'm not going to assume that you've seen this before, but here are where the tappets or lifters go, wherever you want to call them. You see I've got them in the bores here. So they just basically drop in. I just got this on the end of a magnet here. We've got it lubed up, like I said, and lubed on the inside as well for when the push rods go in. And we'll just detach it from the magnet. And if you can see that very well. And we'll just push it down into the bore. Good to go. So those are in there. Like I said, we'll just cover them up so they're out of sight, out of mind, and we won't forget them to put them in when we put the head on and all that excitement. Alright guys, here is the head off of the TR250. This is the head that came off the car. I didn't buy a new head, so this head should work out okay without any fitment issues. Apparently this head has had some work done on it in the past, according to the records I received with the car. It apparently is a gas flowed head, so I believe it's been ported and polished. From what I can see, it looks like it has a little bit. Anyway, it purportedly had the valves done not too long ago before I received the car. Actually, in the box of parts that I received all of the old valves and old valve springs, so I have the old parts to prove that the head work was done. So what I've done over the last week is I've just taken out the valves and cleaned those up, and they've all come up actually quite well. So we've got those all labeled here from 1 to 12 in the baggies, and we've got number 1 just out here. We're just checking the guides. I actually do have new guides for this head if need be, but it looks like the guides are okay as well. So I think the only thing we're going to do with this head is we're just going to lap these valves in just to clean up the seats a little bit. The seats have a little tiny bit of pitting that I think we can get out with just some lapping compound. So we're going to try that. Hopefully that will work, and we can get away with using this head that was on the car. So that's it for that. I'll bring you back when we start lapping in the valves. All right, before we start working on this, I'm just going to say this. So might get some critique on this technique, but we are not going to be lapping the valves in by hand. Well, technically we are going to be doing them by hand, but with the aid of some machinery. So we are going to be using an impact gun to turn the valve slowly as opposed to turning it by hand. I think that's called, according to the manual, if I recall it correctly, I think it's called the Diabolo effect or something like that, when you're turning the valve lapping tool by hand. Anyway, you can check me on that. So we are going to be using an impact gun to turn the valve with the suction cup slowly, and we're going to be raising and lowering the valve onto the seat with a little bit of the compound. We're probably going to do it twice, one with a sort of a coarse grit compound, then go to a finer grit, see if we can get out those little pits. So that's what we're planning on doing. I'll bring you along, or I'll bring you back when we actually start doing this process. Look who's back.
Hi. I've heard you have more beer.
Yeah, I picked up more beer today.
I came to drink it all and I'm leaving.
Okay, so we're just about to start. We're going to start with the worst one, which is number 9. Number 9?
Yeah.
So we'll figure out whether we can do this by doing the worst one first. So we'll bring you back when we start the process. This is what I was talking about with the impact wrench before, with the suction cup. So we can rotate this quite slowly if we need to. So I mean, you can do variable speed versus turning it by hand. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. So
yeah. So let's get started. We need oil.
Yeah. So I'm going to grab some motor oil or a squirt can, and we got our compound. Lots of paper towels there. Blue shop rags there. So we're good to go.
Beer.
Beer.
Where's the beer?
Oh, you got to get the beer. Well, the fridge is right beside you, so that's a good space to be. Okay. Cheers. So we've got the block off the workbench. Sorry.
Okay.
So yes. We've got the head off the bench on blocks. Okay. We've got the valve stem oiled down. We've got the grinding compound on the valve heads, and we're just going to stick it.
And we have to be very careful not to get...
We don't want to spread that around everywhere.
Yeah. Especially not inside the guide, because that's going to make...
Yeah. We don't want to widen the guide out.
Yeah.
All right, and we've got our little tool here ready to go. I've actually seen this done a couple of different ways. Obviously, you can do them by hand. Obviously, I've seen them done with the tool, but I've also seen them done from the back side with a piece of tubing and a piece of, either way. So we're going to go with this technique, and we'll show you.
Yeah, because with the tubing in the back, you can control the pressure.
Yeah.
With this, you can control how hard you press and how, like, obviously the speed you can control even the other way, but the pressure you control very well with this way.
All right, we'll bring you back after we've done a bit of the process. We're going to use the smaller sucker for the smaller valves and the larger sucker for the larger valves. All right.
We have this one with the... can't take it out now.
Half inch?
It's a 3/8.
3/8 and...
versus quarter
inch. Okay, so we went back to the larger sucker on the smaller valve because the smaller sucker was not holding it and turning it as much as we wanted. So low speed, turn, lift,
Yeah, when lifting, so the paste can go back inside because we're pushing it, and eventually we're gonna. Yeah, there's not much left on it. You can just push it back in manually.
And a lot of this will come down to sound as well. You'll actually hear when it's cutting and when it's actually smoothing out a little bit. So just kind of got to listen to it too. Another reason not to have your music blaring.
I don't know if you can hear it, but in the beginning it's like it's rough, and then it starts going smooth. See, now it's smooth, but when I lift it and put it back in, you can hear it sounding.
You can hear it cut. So I should have probably taken a bit of a better before and after, but we're doing okay here. We're just going to do another round of grinding. So there are some little gray, I don't know if you can see it very well, little gray pits that we're trying to get out. That the valve is turning evenly, as far as, it's got the paste on it now, but as far as the coloring is concerned on the edge of the valve, that's looking good. It's nice and even all the way around. So we're going to go through another series of grinding and see if we can get rid of those pits entirely. Not really pits, they're just little dark areas. I guess they are pits, but...
They are pits,
yeah.
That's what they are.
Yeah.
And they're only on the exhaust valves.
Yeah.
We're going to get rid of them. We just need to do a lot of grinding.
So I'm not sure if you're going to be able to see this or not, but we're definitely making progress. So just a few small dots left to get out, so we'll go one more round, and the valve's looking pretty good. So we'll go one more round with the course and see what we come up with. Alright, we just finished our last course, and we're looking pretty good. I think all the dots are pretty much out, so I would say that looks good. So there's some shadows, but that's just kind of grease from my finger. So I think that looks pretty good.
Yeah, all the pits are gone.
And the valve itself. So I think that, I should probably get that in focus.
Yeah, I love seeing the back of your hand
Yeah,
all the time
I know. It's better than the back of my head. All right, so we're going to move on to the intake and clean that up just to get one set done. And then we'll probably call it a night, and I'll just work on the rest of them on my own accord throughout the rest of the weekend.
You only have 5 more like this. The other 6 are going to be...
5 more exhausts to do, which are obviously the worst ones. The intakes actually look much, much better. So yeah, it's really the exhaust valves that need some work. So anyway, we'll do one intake, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah.
One intake and one more. So if you recall, I mentioned that I had new valve guides and we didn't know whether we were going to need them. So we're looking at the manual and we're looking to try to check the valve guides. So it says here, check the inlet and exhaust valve guides for wear, insert a new valve in each guide, and turn and tilt the valve diametrically. If movement across the valve seat dimension A, so there's dimension A, is exceeds 0.20 inches or 0.508 millimeters, the valve guide should be replaced. Okay, that's what it says.
That's like 0.20 is like 200 tau. If you have a slopey valve with 200 tau of play.
So we've got a dial indicator here, and we were just trying to figure out a way to check that. And what are we at?
Like 6 tau.
So
6 tau is a little bit less than 200 tau, right? Because 0.20 is 200 tau.
Yeah. So we think the guides are okay, and we're not sure whether the numbers are accurate in this manual.
I can actually check the millimeter, the metric conversion.
So it was 0.508 millimeters. All right, just coming up to 8 p.m. and we're going to call it a night. So I think that's going to be successful. So we've got these 2 valves done. this was being the worst of all of them, basically. So if we can get these to work, generally speaking, we should get the rest to be able to work. So I guess I'm going to be out here for a few hours over the weekend doing these. I'll probably have to take a little break in between because I don't think I can do all this straight in one shot. It's kind of boring.
I think you can bring a
I could probably start, yeah, drinking beer and having a bar stool here. I'd be hammered by the end of it. But anyway, so we'll do this over a period of time, that's for sure. And I'll bring you back when this is entirely done so you can inspect it and comment.
Yeah. Okay.
Any final last words?
Do you want to assemble these two? So.
No.
Or no?
No.
Okay.
It's going to take me a while to do these, so I'll worry about assembling them at a later date.
Okay. You want me to come?
Well, we'll see.
Okay.
Okay. Have a good night. Thanks for watching. Talk to you later.
I forgot you were filming. Cheers.
All right, guys, just coming up to 29, and we're going to call it a night out here. It's definitely a mess out here. We have to do a little bit of cleaning before we resume tomorrow. I did get my 73 TR6 head just to have a quick look at the actual springs to see if there are anything underneath the actual springs where they sit on top of the head, because there's a bit of a discussion going on whether there should be some sort of shim or retainer under the spring to keep it from boring into the head. My 73 TR6 head does not have any of those, so I just wanted to check on that, because the TR250 head that I have, which was normally or originally a single spring, I think, has been converted to a dual spring. It does not have anything to keep the springs from boring into the head, and I wanted to see if that was kind of normal. So anyway, so another bit of a discussion piece on that a little bit later on. Anyway, I'll continue working on the head and working on the remaining valves over the next couple of days. It will take me some time to do that. But for now, in the meantime, I'm happy that I got that pilot bush done today and a few other little bits and bobs on the car. I was having a discussion with Elin, something weird actually on my... So this is the oil feed and the oil pressure switch to the head. So this, I probably haven't discussed this, but so this had an oil feed line to the head, which would normally come out of this port here, but obviously this port is significantly larger than obviously this screw in. So I'm not sure what's going on. I'll have to go back and look at some videos and look at my notes to see what happened here and see if there's some sort of adapter that I'm missing for that hole. Anyway, more stuff to look at. That's it for tonight, guys. Talk to you later.